Hey everyone, welcome back to Inventing Construction. I'm Ross Griffin, and today we have Harry Montgomery with us. But before we introduce Harry, I'd like to introduce the main topic and subtopics of our discussion today. So main topic, and this is quite an interesting one, it's aspiring digital and carbon quantity surveyors. We're going to talk about what are the barriers of entry for quantity surveyors that want to be digital or carbon orientated. We're going to look at the education, the past, the present, and potentially what we would like from the future of education for the carbon and digital quantity surveyor, future expectations from Harry's perspective, and key takeaways for aspiring quantity surveyors. But first of all, let's not waste any more time. Harry, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Harry Montgomery. I'm cost manager here at KOSMOS. I'm the new boy. I joined the Copenhagen HQ last month at the time of recording this podcast. I'm an advocate for digital construction. I love information management, BIM, data analysis. I think it's important skills that we need to have as QSs to perform well as cost and commercial managers.
Yeah. How many years have you been working in this discipline, Harry?
8. It's been 8 now. 5 of them part-time education, quantity surveying at Nottingham Trent Uni and Dublin Institute of Technology. So that was 4 days a week working.
Yeah.
1 day a week studying.
Yeah.
And then 3 days hardcore since.
Yeah, it's a nice way to do
3 years hardcore.
3 days hardcore.
3 days. That's too Danish.
Yeah. It's like dog years here.
Yeah.
You're talking about
3 days work, 2 days golf.
Yeah, lovely. Jeez, you've the life. This is what you're aspiring to be, I guess, in the future, right? As a part-time golfer, part-time QS. But tell me, we're talking about digital and carbon quantity surveyors here, and it's not a terminology that's used that often in the industry, but you would know from KOSMOS, we're trying to change that perception and the understanding of what digital and carbon quantity surveyors are. Over your last 8 years, could you talk a little bit about the barriers that you have faced when trying to become a digital QS or a carbon QS or even the implementation and your experiences within the industry?
Yeah, so I can definitely give it a go. First barrier that I always go to and ask is awareness. How can you be aware of all the different digital construction skills, techniques, processes out there? Especially when starting out. So what are your sources of information for learning about that? So you go to your university course. That's 8 years ago. I don't think the agenda then was heavy on the techniques that we're currently using now. Yeah. We were using dim paper to do takeoff. Yeah. Costex didn't enter until I think I was in year 3 or 4. Yeah. And That's one element. For takeoff, how do you know what is the latest technique for that? Apart from learning from your seniors in the business and what they're teaching you at uni. How do you get out and become aware of what the possibilities are?
So if you talk about the knowledge and understanding of what's available in the industry, then are you kind of saying 8 years ago during your starting out in university that perhaps the university courses aren't covering enough of this from the quantity surveyor's perspective now?
I don't know. I want to be careful here. I don't want to be
I would
criticizing.
Criticize and insult everyone. Go for it.
At the time, I don't know what the agenda is now. Like I know so I'm in Denmark now. I've not had too many conversations with people in the UK education system. A couple of months ago and I did catch up with the juniors and what they were learning. They are learning how to. They're not using dim paper at least. Yeah. I think on the topic of BIM, I did hear that they're still using the term BIM level 2, which as far as it's gone in 2018, and this is in the UK. It's been replaced by the Information Management Mandate, ISO 19650, UK BIM framework. Anyone, it might be naive, but anyone still talking about BIM level 2 is probably,
7 years out of date now.
If that's still how it's being taught, I don't know. I'd like to get back in the room and take a look. That's
for anybody listening there for the universities. Then please get in contact here because we'd like to hear from you to be able to start this conversation. We have it with quite a number of universities in Ireland, with the SCSI in Ireland. we should be also talking to the RICS on this, because the reality is, and from what you're saying, is that perhaps we're not educating our QSs coming out of university with the right information in the right way, perhaps. But we'll come back to that a little bit in our educational piece. So other than access to information in understanding what software is available, context for within the industry, etc., what other barriers did you come across after entering the market, after your studies?
Yeah, it's probably another common one, but we could probably go down experience of resistance to change.
Yeah.
So construction's not, it's probably not well known for adapting to change and welcoming change.
Yeah.
A lot of the senior members of teams have been in the industry a long time. They've been promoted because they've got good experience. They've got ways that have worked on projects. They've delivered projects successfully. They might not see a need for change. With change, it requires effort. There is a cost to it, whether that's time or resources. And if you don't have a budget for that effort, for that time and resource, then maybe it gets put on the back burner. We're also busy as well.
Yeah.
Like even people who might admire or recognize that new ways of working are important, when you are drowning in deliverables that you need to get out the door, maybe it's not prioritized as much as even people would like it to be.
But if you are drowning in deliverables, as you put it, wouldn't it be advantageous to look at more digital orientated solutions to help you with that workload, so you become more efficient in the delivering of that workload, so you can do more with less, if that's I guess where I'm going with it?
Yes, ideally you would want to take full advantage. Like if we use Takeoff, for example, if you were struggling to measure a huge building and you were doing it by hand, or you're doing it in a 2D point and click way, and you're struggling to get all your quantities from the design information that you have, you might think, I've heard of people who are extracting quantities from these models. Maybe I'll just do that. And like we know, it's not as easy as that. You have to ask for information in the right way. Then you have to learn about information management. You have to learn about BIM. You will probably want to get involved with the exchange information requirements to be able to just ask for the right information. Yeah. Then when you receive it, you need to make sure that it's to the quality that you need it in. So you've got to validate it, and all those different skills, that takes time to learn.
So I think you answered your own question there in terms of how long was the return on investment. You're not, in reality, you're not talking a delivery life cycle. You're probably not talking a project life cycle. It's probably multiple deliverables, multiple projects by the time you can get people up to speed in all of that information understanding. But still, wouldn't it be better in 3 years' time to have made the decision now to start implementing that than in 3 years' time when you look at your organization and go, I wish we started that 3 years ago?
My answer is yes.
Of course. It has to be in that way, doesn't it? So even a little investment now on a small project surely will have more benefit for you in 3 years' time than zero investment now and you still having the same problems in 3 years' time.
Yeah. But to make that a bit more tangible, it sounds nice, but there aren't too many case studies or presentations out there. I'm really impressed by the presence of quantity surveyors that's increasing at like Digital Construction Week.
Yeah.
But there's not too many people there even saying, wow, we changed this in our process and it saved us this amount of time.
The case studies are not there yet because I don't think people are implementing any of this stuff yet. I honestly feel that the quantity surveying organizations that are promoting this aren't really implementing it at a major level. They need to start showing that so we can learn from that as a discipline and as a group, right?
For me, maybe we should be looking at more of the side benefits. Like, it's not just productivity why I would choose to take off in this way using a model. It's also like the peace of mind it gives you. Like, it's a systematic process. You've got a reference report. If there's something left in the model that you've not taken off, it's there left waiting for some action to be taken. whether or not you choose to leave it out because it's included in a rate somewhere else, or you bring it forward. Like, it's a much more comprehensive way where you can confidently issue and send your work off for check-in or issue to a client because you know you've been through absolutely every element. So it's not just that it has sped up the way I'm working, but it's also given me more confidence in my own work.
I would say that there's another benefit to it is because you've been through the information in order to develop your output, you've also in that process add an extra layer of quality assurance to the information produced by someone else, meaning that the next stakeholder group that looks at the information you've now validated can trust it even more, and so on goes the life cycle of this information. The more stakeholders that look at it, the more quality assurance is put into that level of information. So I think we have a duty on construction projects to actually do this. It would be my opinion, but of course a lot of companies would say, but we're not getting paid to do that. Ross, why would we do it?
Yeah, I think there's probably two parts to it. Which parts, like, are you saying quantity surveyor should pick up model validation? Because some parts, yes, like I would be hesitant if someone said, "Oh, should you start picking up clash detection?"
No,
no,
absolutely, that wouldn't be a QS.
There's different types of model checking.
100%.
Like the most common things that we have to, or I've had to check for in the last month since really using it. And actually, cut out the last month. I've been using it for years, but I've been here at KOSMOS for the last month. You might get different dimensions in the wrong place. Like a length could be where a height should be, and a width could be where a length should be. And then they say that's for a pad foundation. You're going to get wrong measurements for when you are interested in a formwork, interested in the surface area for the blinding. If it's more about, I think for us, the type of information is in the right place. Even sometimes that it even exists. Like sometimes there's, like you might be relying on one attribute across many objects in a model. You can visualize it in a column and you can look all the way down if you wanted to. If you didn't do that, you might see that if you were going to map all those areas, maybe for, let's think of an example, internal walls, and you were using the area that's been calculated by the engineer and you were trusting it. But some of those objects are just empty. And if you just didn't check at all, like just check it's not empty, like that's
And I would say that to go back to your question about should the quantity surveyor take up model validation in relation to clash detection and information quality, I would say clash detection is not part of our remit, but I would say checking the information quality as you've described it is important for us, because how we use information is the exact same way the contractor uses the information. How we analyze that information is the exact same way the contractor analyzes information. It's actually the same way the contractor's subcontractor analyzes the information. So by us adding that layer of validation, it means by the time we go to tender, we have validated information that will result in the contractor and subcontractor understanding the information much quicker and understanding that the quality level is much higher, meaning that they'll trust the information more. So that's a layer of additional value we're creating in the project lifecycle for the client's perspective. And that's what we're there to do, in our opinion. If we come back to just on the barriers at the moment, we talked a little bit about the education, and we'll dig into further into our education structure. In organizations, being able to afford it, I would say, afford the time and the cost of understanding the digitalization and digital workflows that would help them becomes a challenge. What about team members at a similar level of experience to you? You know, perhaps in university, just graduated and so on. Are you seeing those individuals and disciplines also have the same type of hunger you have for understanding digitization within the industry and applying digitization?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I don't think I'm unique. There's definitely a range. There's some people who might be focused in other areas. They might have decided it's really important for me to go down. Straight after uni, they might have found that their priority was to get chartered straight away.
Yeah.
Or they might have gone into a more sustainability route, looking at the different types of ways of measuring emissions. I think but your question was specifically about digital. Probably not within the same organization, but there's definitely enough people out there working for either other consultancies, main contractors. They've got really great digital construction management programs out there, like who we were working with. It's not short of people who, I don't think the industry is short of people who are driving and find it interesting and want to implement it. Was that your question?
Yeah, it's have you come across it? I guess often we hear people working on projects or within organizations where they don't. It isn't common across all the disciplines or even in their own discipline to have the majority shareholder, if you like, within having an interest in digitization or even want to work digitally or, to be honest, to even learn about it.
Yeah, I think from the people I've worked with who I think who have impressed me and work at a really high performance level, it's because they lean into what the strengths are. And I think mine is with digital data. It's something I've got a keen interest in. But other people on the team, I've seen them that the strengths are otherwhere else. Maybe that's stakeholder management or the social side.
And I think that's a key point. I think as we talk about this digital and carbon QS, I don't think that it's a role for every quantity surveyor coming out of university. I think that the other aspects, traditional aspects of the quantity surveyor are still necessary within the industry. That client engagement aspect, that organizational and structural aspect, the contractual aspect, the procurement aspect, for example. But I think that there's a sub-discipline happening here that we're not taking full, at the moment, not full responsibility for, because we need to train and educate, but not taking the value of what that could possibly be. And that's the digital and carbon QS, I think. As we drive more towards this digital industry and sustainable industry, we're just going to need more and more of these individuals, unless we can digitize the process and then perhaps upskill current team members that are interested in working in this way. Perhaps maybe that's a workaround.
Well, I like the idea of, did you say standardize the process, digitize the process? You could say it's digital already, like not many people are using paper anymore, but working in a way where the information that we use does talk to, hang on, I might be touching on a different topic there. We're talking about standardization of the process to make sure that we're consistent on what we do each time. Data is recorded in a similar way so we can compare our work on different projects. That's step one.
And that should be possible to implement on any project or within any organization with some very simple. Yeah,
but it's also difficult. A lot of people would say to standardize the way that we collect data on our projects. How can we do that when every project is so bespoke and unique? I might have an answer around it, but that's a barrier too.
But I would argue that every project is not unique. Every project's form might be unique, but the process of how we design, build, and operate projects is quite similar. And actually, if you bring it down to the granularity of information created on a project, it's exactly the same. An example would be is if we're building foundations, it's more than likely still built with concrete. If it is concrete, it's more than likely poured and cast in the exact same way that the previous end or next project is going to be done. So the reality is that projects in their granular form are identical, I would argue. I don't know if you disagree.
In that area, yes, but from my experience and what I've seen, have you ever seen change trackers looking, even on two similar projects, looking anywhere similar? No. Applications for payment, how does that process look? Cost reports from maybe even within the same organization. They can look differently from teams, different offices. Yeah. So yes, it should be easier to standardize everything. Yeah. But I don't know if I have an instant answer to why it hasn't been. Yeah.
I think perhaps we come from an industry where there's a lot of autonomy on how we do things. So the senior element within the organization or that team environment has the autonomy to set that project up and manage it in in a particular way, and that autonomy means that there's going to be changes to the standards because, well, I prefer it in this way, or my client has asked for it in this way, so we need to change that standard. But if you talk about data structure, at least the foundation of the information should be the same level of quality of information and structure. Maybe there's the component of how that information is presented that changes, perhaps. And again, it's ideology we're talking about here, I guess. Whether it can be implemented, I'm not too sure yet. It's something we need to crack, I guess, going forward. And we haven't done it yet, I would say, in KOSMOS. But if we talk about education a little bit, then, the past, the present, and the future, if you consider your own education in the university that you were in, and I'm not sure if you have the knowledge base, has that education structure changed from maybe the noughties to when you were in university, or is it the same curriculum that has been taught from your understanding? Or like, even if we talk again, you mentioned quantity takeoff using dim sheets. Like, I can guarantee you that's a 20-year-old education, if not a 50 or 60-year-old education method.
Well, I might need to be careful because I don't know what the curriculum was like in 2000.
Yeah.
But I have had an interesting conversation recently where at the end of it, we both agreed, after talking about what quantity surveying was like a long time ago, he said something like 100 years ago, you could take a quantity surveyor from 100 years ago, pull him forward into 2024, give him 2 weeks Excel training, and probably wouldn't be too far off. So are we doing it that differently? Might not be answering your question about education at all.
Well,
but the process maybe hasn't changed, and education could be a part of it.
I think you're onto something there. Right? If you can take a quantity surveyor from 50 or 100 years ago and put them on a project now and give them whatever tools they want to use, if it is paper-based and they're able to deliver the same type of service that we're doing today, then there's something fundamentally wrong with that, is there not? Should we not be transitioning decades by decades here where the role, the understanding, the way we work also transitions so much that it's probably unrecognizable after a 30, 40-year period?
Should we? The answer, I can definitely give a straight yes.
Yeah. But and then, has it? And I would say the answer is probably no, it hasn't. And then we really have to ask the question, why? Why aren't we pushing the limits of our discipline in order for it to be something different in the future than it is today and than it was in the past? Surely the market is asking for something different. But then again, if your experience from the past 8 years is that, well, we don't have the time in the industry to push innovation in our discipline, how can we expect our educational system to drive innovation in the education system? And then how can we expect our student base coming out of university to understand digitization or even have an appetite for it?
Yeah, I would say there's not too much of a requirement on projects to work in this way. Do you see it in many invitations as a consultancy to tender for works, looking at the processes, how we produce our deliverables? I don't think that it's much of a priority for them how we do it. More of I need it to be accurate and I need it by this date.
Well, often we see is that it's business as usual. They're really, when we speak to clients and we talk about what we can do for them rather than what they want us to do, it's really what they want us to do is the bare minimum, because they believe that to be the understanding of the deliverable, whereas what they really need is something completely different. But that's hard to sell to clients when they don't understand the value in it. And maybe it costs more, maybe it costs less.
But should the client even be demanding for it? Like, should the client care how an architect draws or designs the building? Like, what tool is he using? Is he using Revit? Is he using CAD? Like, it's just an expectation that, and most designers have. I don't know many who aren't using Revit or ArchiCAD or something like that. They're moving forward with the times. They're much more, maybe not experts, but they're much more aware of the latest tools and processes of BIM in with like our friends who are architects and engineers, maybe than us. And I don't know if that was a requirement from the client or whether they just said that drive internally within the business, like, oh, this is the direction we need to head in, and then just did it.
So I'll put it to you another way. How many clients out there would be interested in receiving their cost reports, their cost information digitally on a cloud-based solution using dashboards, or the traditional way of PDF-based emails on a Friday afternoon? What would they prefer? What would they suggest that would be the most preferred solution for them in reality?
Yeah, shall we ask?
Yeah,
and get in touch.
Yeah, please, because our experience is that individuals on projects want their PDF report because that's what they've always got. Generally, when you're reporting into management, they are higher management, middle management of a certain age, myself included, and they prefer to receive it in that way. And the idea of having to learn something new, even though it's digitized, it's more efficient, it's information-based, it's real-time data, is a stumbling block for them. So I think there's kind of your challenge. Even though we can be super innovative and drive innovation on projects, maybe the project doesn't want it. Maybe the project manager doesn't want it. Maybe they don't understand it and it's just business as usual. What's your opinion on that?
One opinion might be quite naive, but there'll be a generational shift. There'll be more people coming up, just leaving university now. They're already writing their emails with ChatGPT. They've got information on Power BI dashboards. Maybe they're linking that with the Apple Watch to see, I don't know, the current status of change control. When they're in those senior positions where they're asking for information from their consultants, they're going to be will they settle for a PDF report, or will they make a decision on which consultant am I going to use based on what their solution is and whether it fits in with my digital HQ information management hub?
So really, in reality, what you're saying is we have to wait 20 odd years for...
So that's why it's the naive one, because no, as someone who's trying to make a change, 20 years isn't quick enough.
But the reality is, in the last 20 years, what impact have we seen in the industry? Really, we're still sending PDF reports. We did that 20 years ago. Okay, some things have transitioned digitally, but we're still doing this. It's not, as you say, it's not fast enough. It's not quick enough. We're not taking it on board ourselves to be innovative enough on the projects, both from a delivery perspective, but also from the clients asking for this information.
What other options do we have as well? Because mandates came out. We'd got the BIM level 2. 10 years before in Denmark, they had a mandate. Maybe they're 10 years ahead.
But it's a legislated mandate. In the UK, it wasn't. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that it was BIM level 2 was a suggestive mandate that was that wasn't enforced. Whereas in Denmark, you had to deliver in this way, and
on
the
public
standard
and private projects.
All public.
Public.
The inevitability is the private sector follows the public sector anyway because of the volume of work.
That was probably a daft question, but when it came from my experience with public projects, look, even last year I saw that BIM level 2 was still being thrown around, even though that had been gone. But it was still more of a checklist exercise. Did the mandate work? Like I think for BIM level 2 to be able to say that you've actually brought that to the project to unlock the next level of funding, or whoever the auditor was who does that kind of thing. I don't know, the mandate police, if they could see what that CDE was being used and people are uploading to some sort of smart Dropbox, tick, BIM level 2. Are we using 3D? There's another tick. And are we federating the model? Tick. Outside of that, like, you're missing a lot of the value of the whole process.
The quality of information, the information sharing, communication flow.
Aside from mandates, then what was the different? What do you think was it so good about the Danish?
Because it set the standard in which to work within. So your information quality had to be a certain level. You had to use.
It was policed at a more granular level.
On the project, it was policed because everybody signed up to this. So it wasn't something that maybe you would do. It's something you had to do on all your public projects.
Yeah.
And the reality is that once everybody signed up to that, the industry moved together in the same direction. and private sector followed, because the consultants delivering to the public sector were the same consultants delivering to the private sector. The contractors working for the public sector were the same contractors working for the private sector, and it became business as usual as opposed to should we, would we, could we implement.
Why do other industries, or why don't other industries need a mandate to perform in that way? I'm looking at like manufacturing,
the automotive industry as an example.
Automotive.
Yeah.
They're not waiting for a mandate. Is it more competitive?
I think they're driven by market competitiveness. So if one car manufacturer is producing cars at a much cheaper cost, then it's driven the market. It's the incentive there is for the other companies to drive innovation in their organizations to get the price of that product down. But in construction, it's the opposite. We don't have the same market when it comes to that, because we're not trying to drive price down when it comes to apartment construction, hotels, etc. The price is what it is because the market is set. And I say that is the difference in the consumerism aspect of manufacturing versus construction. So we've two challenges for it to be business as usual. We've a challenge for ourselves in order to standardize, as you mentioned, across an organization internally so that we're collecting information in the same way. And then the secondary challenge is outwardly, our client base also wanting to digitize their workflow to get information in a certain way. Internally, I think if we continue working the way we're working, we'll be able to achieve that. Externally is a bigger challenge. We need to find clients out there that are really interested in working digitally to create efficiencies in their process and workflows to give them better quality projects. And I don't mean from a cost perspective or time perspective. I mean also from a social perspective, making projects fun so that we enjoy going to work. Why can't we just have that in the industry? Why does it always have to be heartache and backbreaking to deliver a construction project?
No, totally. I agree.
You're way too young to know any of this, but the rest of your career is going to be like this. I know, I'm only joking. And I think that type of innovation, has to be part of what we strive to do in the next number of years. We have to keep pushing innovation so that we kind of get better at what we do, and it becomes fun. At the end of the day, it has to be fun. But some key takeaways for QSs then that are aspiring to become digital QSs or carbon QSs. You mentioned earlier on access to information. What would your advice be? Where do you access your information? How do you become knowledgeable about this type of stuff?
Okay, I think LinkedIn's a useful resource. There's the different ways of using it as well. You can follow a load of interesting pages, a load of interesting people who are writing every day about new topics, and you can go down, if you like the sound of it, then you can go down a rabbit hole and read a bit more and read a bit more and read a bit more. But then on the same platform as well, you can message these people. Yeah. And that's something that I think is quite common, and a lot of people out there are happy to help. Yeah. Just find someone who you find interesting on a topic, message them and say, hey, can we have a chat about this? Yeah. Doing a similar kind of thing myself. Cool. Should we compare notes?
Yeah. But I think you need to do that. I think everybody in the industry wants to work together anyway and collaborate.
Look, 9 times out of 10 as well, even people who would work in companies that you might see as rivals, they're still happy to help. Yeah. And anyone who hasn't been, it's my suspicion that they were probably saying more than they were actually doing. It's not that people out there aren't happy to help because they.
Can I ask you a question? If you reflect back to university years, was the university promoting the use of LinkedIn as a communication tool and a learning tool for students and for you guys when you were?
No.
Yeah, I can see that a lot, and I'm wondering why universities aren't promoting that as a way of complementing their education, using LinkedIn as a tool to broaden your connection base. Because when you come out of universities, I feel that the students are still...
I remember... Yeah. Sorry.
Jump in. Yeah.
I remember a time, probably, it might have been 5 or 6 years ago, if you were signing up for LinkedIn, it was because you were looking for a new job. Yeah. You were looking for a recruiter or something like that. It wasn't it's not always been known as an educational resource or even social.
Yeah.
Like, you're right, you put your CV on there, and so maybe that's a shift that has changed since I was at university.
I think it must be 10 years now we're using LinkedIn as not just education, but also for prospecting clients and new jobs and doing information sharing and so on. So I think there's a strong aspect to that, the possibility for LinkedIn that people haven't caught onto. And the universities should be kind of maybe pushing that a little bit, looking at alternative modes of education. Like I think YouTube, for example, talking about trying to understand a little bit further what the digital QS might look like, or the carbon QS. There's loads of stuff on YouTube that you could just watch when you're commuting or if you're sitting around with nothing else to do. Yeah. Which as a student is a lot of time, to be honest, you know. You guys do nothing. You just sit around. Not you guys. You're way too old to be students. You're on LinkedIn. Sorry, but yeah.
Do you think it's always easy to find though? If you were going to go, oh, okay, I don't know anything about this at all. Do you think it's easy to go and search on YouTube and find digital quantity surveying skills, digital quantity surveying course? Because I don't think it is. I think
hang on a second. Let's find out. What did you say? Digital quantity surveyor.
I would say the most useful skills I've learned are where I've looked at other industries, or just looked at learning something new. Maybe that's
digital land surveyor, digital quantity surveyor. Let's see what comes up. Elia, episode 7, inventing construction. Look, we're already doing it. Hey, so loads of stuff comes up if you just
okay.
Just
2020.
Well, yeah, but that's only me in 2020. But so I think the opportunities are out there for people. I think maybe.
But how do you take that to the next level as well? Like, so that presentation will show how, I think on that project we got 15 buildings.
Yeah.
Took them off in rapid time. You within 0.1% of the tender return price, and it was a really good success. But then, where do you go to learn how to validate a model for takeoff? Like.
Have you tried YouTube? Let's just see how model validation works. No.
Yeah.
Look, we don't care about this kind of stuff, Ross. This is a different episode that you can do on your own, you know, in the office. But Harry, thank you very much for joining us today. The guys have now 50 minutes of editing to do down to 30 seconds. So I hope you guys are doing that today. We want the videos returned to us straight away. The last word for this recording is go Denmark against Germany. By the time this comes out, we'll know the result, but nevertheless. Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.